The airport security alarms screamed just as the little girl disappeared. Hundreds of travelers stopped walking at once. Boarding announcements continued overhead, but one terrified mother was no longer listening. She spun in circles, calling her daughter's name, while panic spread through the crowded terminal faster than anyone expected. Marcus Reed, a black airport maintenance technician, heard the crying and immediately left his toolbox beside a service elevator. He rushed toward the family, hoping the child had only wandered into a nearby shop before the situation became something much worse. The mother could barely breathe. She was holding my hand. I looked away for 1 second, and she's gone. Nearby passengers joined the search while airport security quickly closed several exit gates across the terminal. Marcus calmly asked the little girl's name, age, and what she was wearing. Before the mother answered, a businessman suddenly pointed toward Marcus and shouted that he had seen the black worker talking to the child earlier. The entire terminal became silent. Security officers immediately looked toward Marcus instead of continuing through the nearby stores. Travelers slowly stepped backward while several people quietly raised their phones and began recording the growing confrontation. Marcus nodded calmly. She asked where the toy store was. I pointed toward the second floor and continued fixing the elevator. His voice never changed. But he noticed the frightened mother no longer looked at him the same way. A security officer asked Marcus to remain where he was while other officers searched the terminal. Marcus looked toward the digital airport map and noticed something that immediately caught his attention. The service elevator beside the toy store had stopped responding. Marcus remembered reporting that same elevator earlier that morning because its emergency doors sometimes failed to reopen after short power interruptions. The repair request had been delayed because the airport expected thousands of holiday travelers that afternoon. Marcus pointed toward the elevator. Stop searching everywhere. Check the service elevator. The officer hesitated because no passenger was allowed inside maintenance areas. Marcus knew every hallway behind the airport walls and understood exactly where trapped passengers could end up. Without waiting another second, Marcus grabbed the emergency access key from his toolbox and ran toward the elevator. 2 officers followed behind him while the worried mother hurried through the crowd hoping someone finally had the right answer. Inside the maintenance hallway, the emergency lights blinked softly above silent concrete floors. Marcus pressed his ear against the elevator doors. At first he heard nothing. Then a tiny, frightened voice quietly whispered for someone to help her. Marcus immediately unlocked the emergency control panel and manually released the safety brake. The heavy elevator doors slowly opened only a few inches before stopping again. Through the narrow gap he saw the little girl sitting quietly on the floor. She looked frightened but unharmed. Marcus reached through the opening, gently lifted her toward the gap, and carefully pulled her into the hallway just before airport engineers finally restored the elevator power throughout the building. The little girl immediately hugged Marcus as hard as she could. She cried into his shoulder while repeating that she thought nobody would ever find her. Marcus simply smiled and quietly told her she was safe now. Her mother ran through the hallway and dropped to her knees while hugging her daughter. Tears covered her face as she thanked every officer nearby. Then her daughter pointed toward Marcus and quietly said, "He saved me." The hallway became completely silent. Everyone remembered the accusation made only minutes earlier. The businessman who pointed at Marcus slowly lowered his head, while avoiding eye contact with everyone standing nearby. Airport security reviewed every camera. The footage clearly showed Marcus answering the child's question before walking away toward the broken elevator. Another camera showed the little girl entering the elevator alone, moments before the emergency doors failed. The lead officer slowly walked toward Marcus and removed his cap. "Mr. Reed, I'm sorry." Marcus looked around the crowded hallway before quietly answering, "You spent 15 minutes questioning me while she waited behind one broken door." Nobody answered because everyone understood exactly what he meant. Fear had chosen someone to blame before anyone truly searched for the missing child. Those lost minutes could have ended very differently if Marcus had stayed silent instead of helping. The little girl reached into her small backpack and removed a tiny airplane keychain from the airport gift shop. She smiled while placing it into Marcus's hand. "Heroes should keep this," she whispered with complete honesty. Marcus smiled warmly and accepted the little airplane. Outside the terminal, flights continued leaving exactly on schedule. Inside the airport, however, an entire crowd learned that assumptions travel much faster than truth. But kindness always reaches the destination first. The little girl held the airplane keychain tightly while looking up at Marcus. "I wasn't scared anymore when I heard your voice." Marcus smiled gently because children often remembered kindness more clearly than adults remembered facts. Her mother slowly walked toward Marcus with tears still running down her face. "I believed the first thing someone said about you." She looked down in shame. "I never even asked who you really were." Marcus nodded quietly. Fear makes people look for answers before they look for truth. Nobody interrupted him because everyone standing inside the maintenance hallway knew those words described exactly what had happened only minutes earlier. The businessman who made the accusation finally stepped forward. His confident expression had completely disappeared. "I'm sorry." Marcus looked directly into his eyes. "What exactly are you sorry for?" The man struggled to answer the question honestly. After several uncomfortable seconds, the businessman lowered his head. "I saw you helping a child, but my mind created a completely different story." Marcus remained silent because the truth had finally spoken without anyone forcing it. Airport engineers finished repairing the elevator and discovered a burned emergency relay hidden behind the control panel. The lead engineer quietly admitted Marcus reported the exact problem earlier that morning, but management delayed the repair because holiday traffic was extremely busy. The airport manager immediately found the maintenance report inside the computer system. Marcus's warning had been marked non-urgent only 3 hours earlier. Everyone standing nearby realized 2 mistakes almost created one heartbreaking tragedy during the busiest travel weekend of the year. The lead security officer gathered every responding officer near the maintenance hallway. The cameras confirmed Mr. Reed only helped the child before returning to work. He paused briefly. "Everything after that was our assumption, not our evidence." Several officers quietly looked toward the floor. They understood the difference immediately. They had followed suspicion instead of facts, and while they questioned Marcus, a frightened little girl remained trapped inside a broken elevator, waiting for someone to hear her voice. The mother hugged her daughter once again before walking back toward Marcus. "I don't expect you to forgive me today." Marcus smiled kindly. Forgiveness begins when people choose to learn instead of pretending nothing happened. The little girl looked confused while listening to the adults. "Mom, why did everyone think Marcus was bad?" The question echoed through the hallway. Children always asked the simplest questions, yet adults often struggled to answer them honestly. Her mother knelt beside her. "Sometimes adults become so frightened that they forget to be fair." The little girl frowned. "That doesn't make sense." Marcus smiled softly. "No, sweetheart. Sometimes it really doesn't." News reporters quickly gathered outside the terminal. After hearing about the airport lockdown, several cameras waited near the main entrance hoping to interview the family. Marcus quietly picked up his toolbox because he wanted to finish repairing the remaining elevators before his shift ended. Before Marcus reached the employee hallway, the airport manager stopped him. "Please wait." He held a folded maintenance report in his hand. "This repair request probably saved her life." Marcus looked at the paper before quietly nodding without saying another word. The airport manager gathered his maintenance team later that afternoon. Holding Marcus's report above his head, he made one promise. "Every safety warning receives immediate attention from today forward. We will never ignore another technician because we think tomorrow will be soon enough." Passengers slowly filled the terminal again as flights resumed their normal schedules. Families hurried toward departure gates, children carried backpacks, and airport announcements returned to their familiar rhythm. Yet many travelers kept glancing toward Marcus with completely different expressions than before. As Marcus repaired another escalator near Gate 12, he heard tiny footsteps running toward him. The little girl stood there smiling while holding a folded piece of paper decorated with colorful crayons. "I made something for you," she said proudly. Marcus unfolded the drawing carefully. It showed a smiling airport worker standing beside an elevator while a little girl waved happily beside her mother. Across the top, uneven handwriting read, "The man who found me when everyone looked somewhere else." Marcus carefully folded the drawing and placed it inside his toolbox. "I'll keep this forever." The little girl smiled proudly before hugging him one final time. Nearby travelers quietly watched the moment without saying a single word. As Marcus finished his shift and walked toward the employee parking lot, airplanes continued taking off above the evening sky. The tiny airplane keychain gently swung from his backpack while the child's drawing rested safely inside his toolbox beside the repair reports. Marcus looked back once at the busy airport before unlocking his truck. Thousands of strangers would pass through those terminals every day. Most would never know what happened behind one broken elevator. But the people who witnessed that afternoon would remember one important lesson forever. Fear found someone to blame within seconds. Truth needed time to catch up, but kindness never stopped searching, even when everyone else looked in the wrong direction. The next morning, Marcus returned to the airport before sunrise. The terminal was still quiet. Maintenance carts rolled slowly through empty corridors, and the first flights of the day had not yet begun boarding. Everything looked peaceful, but yesterday's memories still echoed through every hallway. As Marcus unlocked his maintenance workshop, he noticed a small envelope resting on his toolbox. There was no name outside except one simple word written in blue marker, "Marcus." He slowly opened it before beginning his morning inspection. Inside was a handwritten letter from the little girl's mother. She thanked Marcus for saving her daughter and admitted she almost allowed fear to become more powerful than truth. She promised her daughter would always remember the man who chose kindness when others chose suspicion. Marcus carefully folded the letter and placed it beside the little airplane keychain and the colorful drawing already resting inside his toolbox. 3 simple gifts from one family somehow meant more than every employee award hanging on the airport office wall. Later that afternoon, airport management gathered every department for a short meeting near the main terminal. Security officers, maintenance workers, airline employees, cleaners, and customer service representatives quietly filled the waiting area while travelers watched from nearby restaurants. The airport director stepped forward, holding Marcus's original maintenance report. Yesterday, this report was ignored. He paused before looking around the crowded terminal. Today, it reminds us that every voice deserves to be heard before assumptions replace facts. The director then invited Marcus to stand beside him. Marcus hesitated because he never enjoyed public attention, but the employees applauded until he finally walked forward. The applause lasted much longer than Marcus expected, yet he remained humble. Marcus looked around the terminal before speaking softly. Yesterday wasn't only about one missing child. Everyone listened carefully. It was about how quickly fear convinced people they already knew the answer before they searched for the truth. The entire terminal became completely silent. Travelers stopped pulling luggage. Airport workers paused their conversations. Even nearby children looked toward Marcus while he continued speaking with the same calm voice that had guided frightened people only one day earlier. If you remember anything from yesterday, Marcus continued, don't remember me. Remember the little girl trapped behind one broken elevator while everyone spent valuable time looking at the wrong person instead of the right place. Several security officers quietly lowered their heads. They understood exactly what Marcus meant. The greatest mistake wasn't asking questions. The greatest mistake was allowing suspicion to delay the search when every second mattered. Just before the meeting ended, the little girl suddenly ran across the terminal carrying something wrapped inside a small gift bag. She smiled brightly while placing it into Marcus's hands. Inside was a miniature airport snow globe with a tiny airplane flying above the runway. She looked up and smiled. Now you'll always remember our airport. Marcus laughed softly. I don't think I'll ever forget. The little girl shook her head. Not because of yesterday. Marcus looked curious. Then why? She smiled with complete innocence. Because this is the place where everyone learned who the real hero was. Marcus felt his throat tighten. He gently placed the snow globe beside the airplane keychain inside his toolbox before looking through the large airport windows. Another airplane lifted smoothly into the evening sky, climbing higher with every passing second. As Marcus quietly returned to work, he realized something that would stay with him long after every headline disappeared. Fear spoke first. Truth arrived later. But kindness never stopped working. And in the end, the little girl didn't remember the broken elevator, the accusations, or the frightened crowd. She remembered the man who never stopped searching until she was safely back in her mother's arms. Sometimes that is the only ending that truly matters.